And I want to do it a third time, but my husband's like, we're good.
But you want to have it, are you pregnant?
No, absolutely.
That would be a great way to announce it on the podcast.
Oh gosh.
Hi, and welcome to 9+9, the Honest Pregnancy and Birthing Podcast. And today is our first episode, and we'll be talking about 2 under 2, about lots of information that is out there and the judgments that we face, and about VBAC, which is also a very important topic that many of us struggle to understand or even dare attempting. And with me is Kristin, who's been through it all, or is going through it all still. And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. And there's so much you're going to share. Lots of information, because I figured you're the sort of person who likes to read a lot and note it down.
Yes, that's me. At least I used to be able to read a lot more before too, but I do still enjoy listening to audiobooks at the moment.
Great. You can listen to your own voice after this.
Oh, perfect.
And all the information that you've brought to us, basically, so that we don't have to read all these books and mountains of books that are there and get confused about the information that is out there. So I think that's beautiful that you're going to share some of your reading and all the things that you've learned having two boys.
Yes.
And we'll also talk about VBAC, which is giving birth vaginally after having had a C-section, which is not something that many women attempt, but you did. Brave you.
Attempted, yes, is a key term, but yes.
Yeah, so we'll talk about how that went. So starting with, you've got 2 under 2. How did that happen?
Yeah, so actually I think it was always a part of the master plan. So my brother and I are 19 months apart, and my husband and his sister are also 19 months apart.
Oh, wow.
And we're incredibly close with both of our siblings. We consider them our best friends. So I think that we always knew we wanted them to be close in age. However, after the first one, and you're so overwhelmed as a new parent, I think we both had a conversation and said, let's just take like a breather and then wait till we have a second one. But lots of times the babies, they come in whenever they want to come in, and it was a lot closer than we had anticipated. So my 2 boys are 19 months apart, just like my brother and I, and just like my husband and his sister.
Wow, that's divine intervention to make sure that the family way of doing things keeps on going.
Exactly.
Wow, but that must have been really hard for your body. Like, it basically, I mean, now let me do a calculation. Your older one, like, it takes time for the body to bounce back.
Yes.
So your older one was 10 months when you got pregnant again. That's when the body is still repairing itself, actually.
Correct. And I don't know if I think what lots of things that I've read said the ideal time is like 2 years, not before having children again, but just for the body to repair itself, for the mind to kind of repair, and just for the mother to start feeling herself again. So knowing that I was going to have a second one so soon, it did kind of flip lots of things on their head. But it also made me very excited, because when you're already thrown into having a young baby and a newborn, and the daily routine, and already sleep deprived, already in diapers at the time, already doing temperature checks and everything, I don't know if I should use this metaphor, but it's like you're already in battle. So then if someone throws a new like battle in the midst of war at you, you're just like, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah.
Where you're not home happily sipping tea when you have to go into battle. So I was still breastfeeding at the time, and there's a big misconception in culture that women who are pregnant cannot breastfeed. I don't know where this came from, because throughout human history, lots of women still did breastfeed while they were pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a misconception that it's taking nutrients from the baby, or maybe there's a potential loss of the baby because oxytocin is released during breastfeeding, and sometimes that can induce miscarriage. If there's too much oxytocin. I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to like state any facts, but I'm just speaking on generally of, I guess, societal viewpoints. So that is something that I still kept under wraps. I think talking to others and talking to family, that I was still going to be breastfeeding for some time while I was pregnant.
But a 10-month-old needs, like, I mean, they usually start eating, all right, at like 5, 6, 7 months. That's not like they're having full meals. So you breastfeed them quite frequently, I would assume. How did you keep that under wraps?
So living, I guess I also am very much a homebody. So I was very happy to stay home, or I think mostly, maybe by that point, it was mostly comfort feeding at night versus like day feeds, because like you said, the solids were already introduced at that point. So it was a little bit easier to kind of keep under wraps, but I did decide to stop breastfeeding. I weaned him 3 months before my second was born because I needed some break between feeding and then newborn feeding, because just feeding an older child is very different than the every 2 hours.
And also I would assume that the milk is different because the colostrum that comes out, I always wondered about this, like the colostrum that comes out is very different from the rest of the milk that they get for the days after delivery.
Correct.
And so would the colostrum still form if you're still breastfeeding, or then would your older one get colostrum, which is also weird?
Yes, so I was wondering that too. In fact, I approached my husband and I said, I want to do tandem feeding, which is feeding the older one and the newborn. And he said, let's look into this. You should really be ready for what you're up for. And it obviously depends from mom to mom, but sometimes tandem feeding does create the older one to have a little bit more jealousy of the new baby because they're viewing the feeding as a connection with mom, or maybe they're viewing it as theirs. And it's already a big shift in the family dynamic when you're introducing a new baby. And then so we were just not trying to introduce another variable that could potentially cause more trouble than good.
Yeah.
But I do know of some moms out there who've successfully done it, and that is a great question. And I think the colostrum, that's the word, does still form and everything's still there for the newborn, but there has to be, I mean, breast milk is amazing and the way the female body works is amazing and the babies always get what they need, but the actual science behind the makeup of the breast milk for the infant and the toddler, I don't know that.
But how did you prepare your older one, knowing that the new one is coming, and also that like you'll be awake many times in the night, and when you go to the hospital you wouldn't be there for like however many days?
Yes.
How did you, or was he there at the birth?
No, so at the time we were living with my in-laws, and so we slowly started having my oldest sleep with my mother-in-law like 3 or 4 nights a week, maybe back to back, and we were just trying to have him feel as comfortable as he could sleeping in the bed with her. And then also bringing baby dolls home and just practicing like changing diapers or doing role play with the baby doll, as well as trying to gather as many books as possible for children to introduce the concept of another sibling. And that was also a little hard to find. There didn't seem to be like too many books available on this topic.
I think all of them are so negative. Like I have realized that it's a lot like, oh, now the new baby is there, nobody has time for you, but it's okay, this is how it is. I was like, I don't even want to put this in their head that nobody has time for them. What if they do have time for them? Like, what is this negative approach to?
Yes.
We know it's gonna suck, but it's fine. That's not how you should write books.
I think the two like main things that really helped was, one was the introduction at the hospital. They said to have the baby not in the mother's arms, but either in the bassinet or on the bed, so that the older child was seeing the baby as separate from the mom and not, maybe didn't feel any sense of possession. And then also to have a gift saying, older brother, the baby has gotten you this gift and you can open it, and there's this really lovely moment of excitement for the older child. And then the second thing is, which when I first heard this bit of advice, I don't know how I felt inside, but I'll say it to you. But basically, try to spend as much time you can with the older child during the newborn phase. And as a mom of only one at the time, I said, how could you not be around your newborn? And I was thinking, how is this fair? But then you have a newborn and you realize it's so much sleep. And then the times they are awake, it's very minimal times. And so you can be there for that. But the child who needs the most emotional support and physical support at the time is the older child for this transition, because it's a huge transition for them, especially at that young age.
Yeah, especially when they're 19 months old, they don't really, I don't want to say that, like compute everything, but like there is a lot of context that they still don't understand. So physically, to just explain to them that they have to be quiet now, and for real, they have to be quiet. Like it's not a game.
Yes.
That must have been really challenging.
Yeah, it was. But I think, again, even looking back now, because of the sleep deprivation and because of all the craziness, I'm actually at the point now where they're 3 and 4, where I'm looking back and I'm thinking, oh, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, that's what Mother Nature always does to you.
Exactly.
It wasn't so bad. Giving birth was fine. I can do this again.
This is how the human race has maintained itself.
By just fooling yourself. It's all hormones. What's even real? And what is just Mother Nature fooling you into doing it again, going back into battle.
Exactly.
Like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, I feel the same way about like going back into battle. I talked with a friend who has a much older kid. And she was like, once you can tell your child to go upstairs, get dressed and take a shower, you're not ready to do diapering again because you have left this behind and you cannot give up your life.
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah. And once you're in it, you're just like, keep on going, keep on going. But so he was co-sleeping with your mother-in-law.
Yes.
And he was also co-sleeping with you. Like, how did you handle that? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you had 2 people co-sleeping, like one on the right and one on the left?
Yes. So some nights that's how it worked out, and we had bed guards and all of it. And we had a very big bed that wouldn't fit all of us. And I was always thinking, oh, but the older child's going to wake up when the younger one cries for feeding or wakes up. And we did keep them in separate rooms at first, where my husband would sleep with the older one, and then sometimes he would sleep with us. But then I realized that they adapt very quickly. And so maybe he would stay asleep, or my older one would wake up but then quickly go back to sleep.
Yeah, and he'd just be like, oh man.
Yeah, they're so
just
adaptive.
Just gotta get used to this crying.
Yes, and the white noise machine helped a lot. That's another thing as a new mom. I was telling myself, I'm not gonna use a white noise machine. There's this study for it. There's this study against it. I don't know where I stand. And then when I used it, I said, this is what we're going to have to use, especially having sleeping babies in a busy house, in a very noisy city. It was really helpful because you realize as a parent that a baby's sleep is so important, or even a toddler's sleep, or even an adult sleep. Now we're just starting to realize how important sleep is for everyone. And undisturbed and really high quality sleep really sets up the days for success, no matter what the age.
I don't know what you mean. I've not had undisturbed sleep. But back in the days. Yeah. I can't remember what it feels like.
I know, even I'm trying to remember.
Like, what does it feel like to sleep more than 5 hours at a stretch? But 5 hours is great.
Yes.
5 hours are a blessing. But so how did you wean them off from the white noise machine, or are they still on it?
No, they're definitely off it at this point. But I think we did shift houses, and the second home was a little bit quieter, thankfully. And then also I think they just got into sleeping deeper as they got older, which is also another blessing, which I know not all children are like that, but knock on wood, mine are like that. So.
Knock on wood.
Yes, yes,
it's just like great, good sleepers. That's the best you can hope for.
Exactly.
But there is a lot of judgment, I would say, around like white noise machines, and especially it's like, oh, those Americans, you're using white noise machines.
Yes.
Who else would invent a machine to make their baby sleep?
Yeah.
But you had very good experiences with it. And is there anything else that you think like there was a lot of judgment in you?
Yeah, so
of course, the breastfeeding.
Yeah, so of course co-sleeping. With my first, all the information that I read said absolutely not, and especially in American culture, SIDS is what is pushed on to the parents as being very dangerous, or what could happen to the baby if you
SID is sudden infant death, like when they suddenly die and you don't know why. Basically.
Yeah, sudden infant death syndrome, correct. Yeah. And so there's lots of fear pushed on the parents that this could happen. And also as a new parent, you see this small, fragile little baby, and then you think, yes, I have to protect it, and they're so fragile. But in fact, they're fragile, but they're not as weak or like gentle, I guess. I'm not really sure how to phrase it as we think.
They don't break so easily.
That's what exactly I'm trying to get at. So with the first, I had him sleep in the bassinet in the hospital, and at home he was in the bassinet. And then we started realizing that when he would wake up to cry, if we just put our hand on him, then he would stop crying. So my husband was sleeping and he slept the whole night with his hand on his back. And then his shoulder's starting to hurt and his arm's starting to fall asleep. And then I'm thinking, why are we doing this? And my mother-in-law told me, you know, the human species has always slept with their baby. And also if you look into nature, the babies are always with their parent. And I understand that, you know, this is a cultural understanding from where you come from, but just consider co-sleeping. And I still said no, no, no. But then the 4-month sleep regression hit, which for us was quite bad for the first. And I think one night I just brought him in bed with us. He slept amazing and we never went back. And then from day one, we co-slept with my youngest. But I'm always very careful on who I share this information with because I feel like there is such a stigma and such a cultural misunderstanding around it. And that's the other thing I think that today's day and age, I don't know if it's social media, but I feel like mothers are not so supportive of one another and we're always like nitpicking each other's mothering choices, where I really feel like we should just accept that this works best for this family and support one another. However, when you're very tired and sleep deprived and then you do share something a little vulnerable, like co-sleeping for example, and you get a negative reaction or you're feeling judged, you really just don't have the capacity to deal with it, I guess. So you have to really protect your energy the best you can. And I don't want to say censor yourself, but find who you can share that information with. So
basically,
if
read the room and feel the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. You just don't have the energy to take anyone's peep.
Yes, exactly. And lots of people say it happens as you approach 40. And
also that, maybe
yes.
also that.
I'm not 40 yet, but so maybe it's that phenomenon plus also protecting your space and keeping your energy very guarded and close so that you have the energy for raising your children, because that's what's most important, I feel. And to answer your question, the second stigma or cultural difference I think that I faced was breastfeeding longer. And longer is, I mean, to 2 years, which is the HW or the WHO recommended time period. But it seems like lots of mothers breastfeed till 6 months and then stop. Obviously, okay.
Or even 3 months.
Yeah,
like,
or even
I heard this like saying in France where they're like, well, your boobs belong to your husband. And like, first of all, they belong to me. First of all. And they're like sort of attached to me. And then who do they belong to? What is this? But of course, that is also because there is only such a short maternity leave and
yes.
you have to go back to work. So you have to sort of culturally also reinforce what's possible. You can't be celebrating breastfeeding for 2 years and then be like, but you also have to go back to work after 9 weeks.
Yes.
So
current modern day society is not conducive for the working mom or the working parents. It's really tough. It's actually working against us. I'm seeing lots of really positive changes supporting mothers through their journey of pregnancy and then after birth. I think we have a long way to go, but I think we're gonna slowly get there. But you are right, and it's very interesting to me because I feel like people get, or especially moms, can get so triggered towards your choice, and you kind of have to take a couple steps back, and you realize it's not about you. It's actually maybe about them. So for example, maybe the mother couldn't breastfeed, but she wanted to breastfeed. So then she might be upset or have an opinion that you're doing it till 2. So again, another thing that I try to be very mindful of is maybe not telling people that I breastfeed unless the conversation comes up naturally, just because I don't know her experience or if it was a negative one or not, because I know it's really tough for everybody. All moms, all dads, it's tough for everybody, but there are certain things that I think pain points that parents either wish something went differently or things that they wish they did. And then when they hear other parents doing it successfully, not that there's any jealousy, but I think there is sometimes that moment inside of them saying, oh, I wish I could have, or I wish I could have done it differently. And so I just try to be really mindful and respectful of everybody's choices and their parenting choices and styles. And as long as the baby's safe, I say, like, the baby and the parents are safe, I say, please, like, do what works for you.
It's about like being like, keep them alive, keep them safe.
Yes.
That's keep us alive.
Exactly.
That's what's important. But on the other hand, there's so many points in the parenting and pregnancy and birthing journey that can be traumatic, and I think it's important to talk about them and open up the conversation. Absolutely. Because people don't realize that it could be you could have a traumatic breastfeeding journey. Correct. Or moment could also have not, and everything goes great and it's easy for you. But
Yeah.
it has to. A lot of times when you open up the conversation, you realize that a lot of people went through the same thing and just nobody talks about it.
Exactly.
Then you're like, why does nobody talk about it? Like, why
Yes.
did nobody tell me that this would be difficult?
100%. I really wish that more people would talk about the hard parts. I do hear two different sides. Lots of people say when a woman's pregnant, she shouldn't ask for all of the advice about the hard parts because that does plant seeds of fear. But I think as a couple considering having children, they should have very frank conversations with other parents and really say, kind of like our conversation right now, tell me everything, give me the good, the bad, the ugly. And I feel like we do this when we're buying a house, when we're picking a job, when we're going to marry someone. All these major life decisions, we kind of try to get the full scope of the scenario. But you're right, for some reason, when I feel like when it comes to children, it's a little rosy. And
I think because we're all like, oh, once you have kids, you're like, oh, that's so true. Everybody said, like, I'll never feel love like this. And that's true. You'll never feel love like you have once you have a kid. So you want everyone to have that experience.
Yes.
So you don't want to tell them how shitty it is. Because what if they decide against it just because you said it's gonna, like, all the people who are producing this podcast may not have children because of this podcast.
Exactly,
But
the ripple effect. What can I say that's good?
yeah, but at least, you know, when you're in it, then, and there's also, you always come out, the light at the end of the tunnel, you always come out, and you forget how it was to be in battle, and it's just beautiful and gratifying. So, but people are scared probably to give anyone the realities of it.
I feel like the advice that everybody gives, the advice is, oh, you won't sleep, or oh, how are you sleeping? For some reason, I think that's the first connection point for people, because everybody knows that infancy, nobody's sleeping. And so it's kind of like, how's the weather? So if for some reason we all, as a society, focus on sleep.
Yeah, like you'll gain weight and you won't sleep. That's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I know that. But also, what does it mean to be sleep deprived?
Yes.
Then you like don't remember what was a dream, what was reality. Did I really do this phone call, or did I dream about the phone call?
It's a wild, wild time, and you just feel like there's no way to like properly describe it, because you don't feel yourself, you don't feel like you're in your body, because your body is so different. The relationship that you had with your spouse or your partner before is so different, because sleep deprivation obviously is one of the variables, but the dynamic of the relationship has changed, and it can I think go back to what it was before, but you have to make so many mindful choices and moments to reestablish that connection with your spouse in order to maintain it, so that you don't go down the path of roommates and then you go down the path of spouses or
that's
partners.
True. That's why it's so important to have a
yeah.
family that supports you. Like my mother-in-law always says, like, first you were lovers, you have to remember that. That's the first thing that brought you together. And it's nice that she's saying it. Not everyone has a supportive family like this. But friends that, you know, like they just take off the load and help you to get a date night.
Yes,
if you still fit into your dress. Or go shopping for new dresses that you can fit in.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the bad and the ugly and like everything medical part of birthing, because we are here to talk about honest birthing experiences. So what was your birthing experience with the first one, and then how was it with the second one with like a half-healed body?
Yeah.
And how did you approach VBAC? And your first one was a C-section, and obviously if the second one. Why was it a C-section, and how did that happen?
Sure. So I did give birth during COVID in April of 2020. So the whole world was turned upside down, and then the hospitals were obviously turned upside down. So even just getting into a hospital when I went into labor was very difficult. Finding the hospital we were going to was shut for 24 hours for sterilization. So I had to be placed in a nursing home for the night before I was transferred to the hospital of my choice. And it was very strange and very different from anything that I had anticipated or expected. And then when we finally got to the hospital, my intention for the birth was fully natural and also a water birth. And I worked really hard on it. I had a hypnobirthing coach. I did daily meditations that I listened to. I said daily affirmations. I did pregnancy yoga 3 times a week. I was getting reflexology every week. I was getting
Wow.
pregnancy massage every week. I was just I had this goal in mind of what I wanted to do. But also part of this preparation and so much mindfulness around the birth was knowing that the birth can take its own turn, and I'm also going to be okay and ready for that as well. So even though I went through lots of this prep.
Yeah, the prep sounds like you're a marketing professional. Like, this is the spreadsheet. Like, this is the project plan.
Oh, there's definitely a project plan and a Gantt chart, and people who are in project management will know that term. So I just have to like throw that out there. It was all there, but that's what my comfort zone was the planning. That's how I felt in control. So the labor was very prolonged, and at some point, being in the water did help. So if someone has the opportunity to attempt or try a water birth, of course, totally personal decision. I would at least be open to it, even if they don't want to do the actual birth in the water. If they just want to labor in the water, it's a really lovely option, and not all places offer it, but I found it to be really comforting and really relaxing in a time where comfort and relax is usually not words that are described.
Relaxing, yeah.
That's true. So
whatever, that new world relaxing, like different level of relaxation.
Yes. Maybe not relaxing, but around that term, I guess. And the labor was going into 10, 15, 20, 25 hours, and it was really getting quite prolonged. But I had an amazing birth team. So I had a doula, and then I had a very supportive and open-minded gynecologist, and then also my hypnobirthing coach, which was present in the first location, but she wasn't able to be with me for the second location, but she was very much on the phone with my team. And I just felt so supported, and the one takeaway that I learned was that the outcome of your birth doesn't really matter as much as whether you felt supported or not. So my outcome was a cesarean, which is not what I wanted, but I felt so supported and so loved in the whole experience that I had a very positive birthing experience. And having the doula really made me feel supported. And in fact, when the time was up where we had to make a decision of, okay, should we go in for a cesarean right now, or should you continue with this vaginal labor? When we made that decision, I did have to have a moment of mourning the labor that I wanted and just letting the tears flow. My husband, me, just letting it flow. Like,
yeah, you said your husband cried more than you.
Yes, I did. He's going to say, why did you say this on the podcast? I don't think I've ever seen him cry before, but he was crying because he said, I know how much you wanted it. So it wasn't so much about him, but he saw how much, how hard I was working towards this goal. And then once we got all of the emotions out, then we said, okay, let's do it. Let's go to the operating room. My doula was right next to me. As soon as the baby was out, we did like the delayed cord clamping. We tried to leave on as much, I don't know the proper term, stuff on the baby as possible, because that helps with the barrier and helps with the micro gut biome. So we tried to do everything still as we were going to do for the natural birth. We couldn't dim the lights and have the fairy lights or the Christmas lights in the room, obviously, because it was an operating room. But the baby did feed on me in the operating room for the first feed because I had the doula there to support me.
And I think they also turn off the AC, right? If you go for a natural C-section, if there's such a thing.
Yes.
But like as natural as possible, so they turn off the AC so that the baby, when it comes from like 38 degrees Celsius, not into like 18.
Yes, and there's even a technique that was used by my gynecologist, and they try to mimic the cesarean as much as they can to a vaginal birth. So maybe it's a smaller cut and they push a certain way. Again, I don't know the ins and outs, but they try to make it as similar to a vaginal birth as possible. And having the baby's first feed while I was still on the operating table really set me up for success, because lots of women don't get that option. And then the baby goes maybe to the warmer or the NICU, the NICU, or whichever, unfortunately. And then they have a bottle introduced first, and then many hours later, then they try to introduce the breast, and it does sometimes cause a rough start to the pregnancy journey, the breastfeeding journey. So I was very thankful that my doula and my gynecologist were totally on board. Unfortunately, because it was COVID times, my husband had to be outside, but we did have a nurse, live video call that he could watch outside.
Just like your dad live video filming your birth.
Yes.
Great, it's a family tradition. It keeps
Yes. Yes, exactly. That was something we talked about before the show started. My dad's very much into film and photography, and my full birth was documented
It will not be in the show notes.
No. Back in 1988, and I probably have 10,000 plus photos of myself as documents of my life, but I love it.
Yeah, I'm sure your kids will also appreciate it. I mean, I don't know if they'll appreciate a birth video, but they'll for sure appreciate it.
If they ever want to watch their mother's birth, then it's an option, and it's already been digitized from tape. I don't think they'll ever opt into that.
Great.
But
I feel it's like
option.
a new way of trauma, inducing trauma or dealing with trauma. I don't know what, it could go either way.
Exactly.
They didn't know they had this trauma, now they know.
And I'm not seeing this video for the record.
Yeah. Good luck you didn't before
Yes.
giving birth.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. And then your second one, you tried to...
Yes, so not so many doctors support VBAC, which again is vaginal birth after cesarean, because I guess there's some research and there's some backstory onto why it could be dangerous. Obviously the uterine wall after the cesarean, especially around the scar, can be quite thin and can be vulnerable to rupture. So many doctors prefer to do a second cesarean after the first, just for overall safety liability. That's my opinion. But if you can find a doctor who is open to VBACs, I would highly recommend it. There is a very long checklist to be able to qualify for a VBAC. It's about 10 items. But the main point is the uterine scar depth has to be a certain amount. And if it's under that amount, then they don't consider it, even if they're pro VBAC.
How do they check that? Ultrasound?
Correct. And I think mine was already double the minimum requirement. There's other requirements, like the cord can't be around the infant's neck, which again, that's another misconception. Many people think if the cord's around the neck, they can't do a vaginal birth, which it's possible, but we won't get into all of these misconceptions. But there's other things like my metabolic rates, my blood pressure, the baby. And once I had my checklist and once every single one was checked off, then I said, okay, it was approved, let's do this. And
I would also,
yes,
when you have a C-section, so basically the story is your skin and everything below that. If you give birth so quickly after, is it even healed? Like, I would imagine like there's so much pain already in the skin that you have when you grow a baby inside and your skin expands. And the scar tissue is still so fresh, doesn't that hurt a lot? So
it actually didn't. I mean, the body heals so quickly, and also the scar is quite low. So where the belly expands, for example, it's below the scar, so there's no expansion, at least the exterior layers, in my experience of that. There was no discomfort. And then I did also try to do lots of scar maintenance post the cesarean. So you can do massages and you can do lots of things to get the fascia and the muscles and everything.
So what did you do? You like massages?
Yeah.
And then what else?
So if you just YouTube cesarean scar massages, they're all over, and it's just different techniques to kind of loosen up the scar and to help the scar's healing, and you just do it yourself. But I did try to have all of my same pregnancy package preparation, if you want to call it, from the first to the second. It was slightly modified because I was also taking care of, my first.
And an improved version, obviously, like 2.0 of the spreadsheet.
Yes, exactly, 2.0 version 2, correct. So that was all the same, and I was really certain that this was going to happen the second time because I did everything. I was prepared. I thought maybe the first one, because of all the nervousness around the hospital being shut or different things, was impacting the ability for dilation, because as you know, and most moms know, that if you introduce fear, then it can stop dilation or the progression of labor.
That's also probably what you should consider when you do VBAC. Like if you even have the slightest amount of fear, don't do it, because it might just stop you right in the middle, and then it'll be even worse because you were assuming that you could have a normal birth, and then you can't, and you get even more fearful. So you should only go in there if you're 100%.
Exactly. And going back to one thing that you said with the hypnobirthing course, my coach told me that if you have a traumatic birth, then we will work together after. We have meditation sessions. I have like kind of this one-on-one coaching. especially if you want more, it doesn't even matter if you want more, but you need to process that trauma that you had in the birth and then move forward. So also going into my first birth, knowing that I was going to have support if there was a traumatic birth, felt incredibly, like I felt just really, really supported. And she called me and she said, do you want to do the hypnobirthing session, which is basically a guided meditation for a traumatic birth? And I told her, actually, I'm okay, because I didn't take away trauma, or I didn't feel like I came away with trauma. I just came away with slight disappointment in the moment. But there was no, I didn't take away any trauma from it, thankfully. And then with my second, actually the same sequence was playing out, the delay, like the progression or lack thereof of dilation was happening. So there were some things seeping into me like, oh no, we're gonna have the same outcome. And
so like you were also saying that you were dilating to like 3 centimeters and then to 5 and then back to 3, which we talked about it beforehand. Medically is technically not possible that you can progress and then regress. Correct. Which I think is very comforting to know. You can't regress.
Yes.
Labor will never regress.
Yes.
But it can stop. And also there can be medical misreadings, and if they are being told to you while you're in labor, obviously that's going to cause panic.
Yes.
Yes. So you have to take whatever the doctors tell you with a pinch of salt, I guess.
100%. And I know some mothers prefer not to be told what centimeter or what dilation they're at, and some do because it helps them. I feel like once you're like past 8, maybe it's a good thing because you know you're almost there. Again, a personal choice. So this is going back to my first delivery. We did have some, I thought I was at 5, and then again the doctor said I was at 3. So there was kind of a huge discouraging moment for me, because I was thinking that the surges or the contractions are so intense. How am I possibly going back? And then after doing some research, like you said, it can't regress, but the cervix can swell some, which causes a misreading, or the initial reading was not accurate. And so that's another reason maybe for a mom not to choose to follow her dilation, is because maybe if there is a misreading, not to have that disappointment in the moment. So yeah, labor is full of ups and downs. I mean, you remember.
Yeah, sometimes I feel less information is more information.
Exactly.
Or you always should have your partner or your best friend or whoever's with you in labor. They can take all the information and then process it and decide whether it's a good idea to pass it on to you or not.
Exactly, and that's why I'm so pro doula, because she told me I'm going to interact with all the nurses. No nurse is going to talk to you. And let's say a nurse just checked my blood pressure and then they change shifts, so a new nurse comes in. She'll tell her, nope, she just had it checked. So somebody's keeping track for you. And while you're in labor land, what they call it when you're in labor, kind of time goes by, you're not even in your body anymore. It's really helpful to know that someone has your back and you're not having to be asked questions, or you're not having to be...
Think straight. Like just ability to think straight is like so hard. So, but then with your second one, again, same thing happened, progression, stagnation.
Correct. It was just stagnating and it wasn't progressing. And I think we were 8 or 9 hours in, and I was having such strong, so in hypnobirthing we call them surges or waves. It's whichever the mom prefers, because contractions sound very medical. So it's this whole thing around hypnobirthing. So I was having very strong surges. And I remember my doula and my husband looking at each other saying, do you think this is going to go down the same path as the first? Should we make a call now? And again, because I wanted a VBAC so badly, I think I was going to try to prolong the labor as long as we could. But within one of the strong surges, meconium passed, and meconium is the potty or the feces of the infant's first like stool movement. And when meconium passed, as my water broke. So they're very able to see, like, there's meconium, the water broke, so then that's an emergency C-section, because also so early in labor that the baby needs to be removed so that there's not a chance of inhaling the meconium. If it's very, very late, in, like, let's say 9 or 10 centimeters, usually they don't go in for an emergency cesarean, they just try to get the baby out quickly. So
So your son sort of took the
He-
decision
yes,
for you.
Exactly. So I feel like him and I actually I have a soul connection with both of them. I know it sounds crazy, but I think he saw me in the moment and he's like, oh, Mom, you're really having a hard time making this choice. Like, let me make the choice for you. So I was actually, after it happened, it was a relief that I didn't have to make that decision, that the baby made the decision or nature made the decision for me. So it was kind of like an exhale of like, okay. And I was only like 8 or 9 hours in, not like 20, 30.
Yeah. That would have been tough. I think that's very tough. You were in labor for like 3 days and then they're like, oh, well, all of this you could have just not done and saved you that effort.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to you to even do this twice, like to be ready to go into labor again after having done it unsuccessfully.
And
being
I want to
ready.
do it a third time, but my husband's like, we're good.
But you want to have it, are you pregnant?
No, No, absolutely.
That would be a great way to announce it on the podcast.
Oh gosh, no, absolutely not.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think even through all the craziness, I've always wanted to be a mom. So, and I think in my head I've always, it's just it's kind of like an occupation. If somebody's always wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer, they have this title on their head. And I always loved business and marketing and doing what I do professionally, but it's always been marketing / want to be a mom. So I think because I take being a mom almost, I take it so seriously,
It's a
like
job.
a career.
It is
Correct.
a job.
So, and yeah, I really love kids. I would never have more than 3, and I don't ever know if I'll even have 3, so I don't want to put anything out there to the universe. But yeah, I just think having children is such an amazing thing to be able to be their mother, and I just find the whole situation so magical and beautiful. But it has its moments, and it has its like crazy hard times. And I remember first talking to you, and the one phrase that keeps me going is, the hours are like minutes, and the years, hold on, I'm going to get it right. The minutes are like hours, and the years are like minutes. So when you're in the moment, it just feels so expansive and like it's never going to end. But then looking back, the years do fly by like minutes. Yeah. So I think pulling yourself out of those really tough nights and having that perspective really gives you a sense, it helps like ground you back into your role, and I don't want to say your mission because now it sounds very like business-like, but your mission as a parent. And
no, I feel you. Like sometimes you feel like I can't survive this moment, like I'll kill myself right now and everybody who's with me in this room. Yes. But then you also can tell yourself like, listen, day after tomorrow you'll be like, I don't even remember what happened that night.
Yeah.
So you just have to walk through the fog and know that you can make it.
Yes, and the other thing that really helped me in the moments, like the night feedings, for example, was thinking about all the other moms around the world who were also up at night.
Yeah.
And also feeding, and it just felt like this secret club that we're all in it together in this community.
It's the same with labor. Like you're never alone in labor. There's always another woman somewhere in the world laboring, and you all meet in labor land.
Yes.
And give each other strength.
Exactly.
Sounds very hippie, but
it's true though.
It is true. Once you are in this experience, yeah, it is very true. Yeah, it is a job. Being a mom is a job. But I think it's also important to. That's why in the beginning of the podcast I always like introduce people with what they do professionally, because you are a mom and that is basically a full-time job, and I think it's ridiculous if people tell you it's not, because even if you have a nanny and you have 2 sets of grandparents, it's still a full-time job. You can't do it part-time, but you can do some other things part-time, like your earlier career, but even if you do an 8-hour day, it still feels like part-time.
Yeah.
Because out of 24 hours, you're only there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time you're with your kids. So that is the full-time job, and your real job, which earns you the money, is the part-time job, sort of. Yeah,
I feel the phrase that I use is that moms never get to change the channel. So for example, or I don't know the setup, maybe a mom gets to go back to work, or maybe the mom's at home and the dad goes to work. Going back into the office is like changing the channel on the television.
Yeah.
And the mom who maybe doesn't go back to work or is home, I felt like I never got to change the channel. So I always felt like I was going a little bit crazy because I just didn't get to get out of that space mentally. And I was joking with you earlier that I find lots of comfort in spreadsheets, for example. So when I did start going back to work a little bit and delving into numbers and data and spreadsheets, I found so much comfort and relaxation in working with spreadsheets because there was no chaos and it was exact and I could put in a formula and X plus Y equals this, and it was so comforting to me because as a mom, it's
never
so
like that.
Yeah, you don't have predictability.
Yeah, you repeat the same dinner from last night and it's not working. It worked last night. Why is it not working tonight?
Worked with the first child, doesn't work for the second child. 1 hour it worked, the very next hour it doesn't work. So there's only predictability in the unpredictability. That's the only way to put it. And that's why I also think that although mothers, they're very passionate about what they do and choices that they make, which is wonderful, but those choices may work only for that child and it may not work for their second one or third. And so that's why I just feel like we should all be a little bit more chill and relaxed with one another as the mom community, because we're all just learning, and even if we have multiple children, we're still going to be learning with a next one. And even the phases of life. I've talked to so many mothers who have older children, their children are in high school, college, and they say there's no easy chapter of being a parent, because one hardship or hard part, there's another type of translation in the next phase of the child's life. So it's comforting, but it's also
beautiful to have kids.
It's so beautiful.
No, we don't want to isolate anyone from having children.
But I think you're right, going back to once they can go to the bathroom, dress themselves, at least some of the really nitty-gritty hard parts are done.
Once you can go to the bathroom by yourself is actually, I think, a major milestone.
Major.
It's a major milestone.
We have milestones for kids, but we actually don't have like milestones for moms. Use the bathroom by yourself. I've checked it off some days, but every day it's like, I'm still not there yet.
Yeah, so we're approaching. Good luck to you. Hold the vision, trust the process.
Yes, love that.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
It was really entertaining. I think we could talk on more and more and more, but we have a limit to the podcast.
Yes, of course.
Maybe we'll go for a second one once your kids are older and you can tell us about all the
Anytime.
traumas teenagers can.
Version 2, version 3, version 4.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mika. It was lovely.
And all the information that we shared here and a couple of Kristin's favorite books will all be in the show notes. And if you have any feedback or you have another story that you would like to share, you can email us to 9plus9@harkat.in. Thank you so much. This podcast was produced by Harkat Studios.